Hey everybody, this is Dylan. I just wanted to do a very quick Q&A video because I had some pineapple to chop for the freeze dryer because they were on super sale at Sprouts for 98 cents per pineapple. So I'm going to chop them up, freeze dry them, answer a couple freeze drying questions, and I will show you a little show and tell of this new pump that I got for the freeze dryer that is an oilless pump and therefore requires no maintenance pretty much. And that's super exciting because the previous process for freeze drying with the pump that required oil to run, I had to change the oil and filter it after every load. Sometimes I'd have to take the pump apart and clean it out. It was really a nuisance. So this new oil-free pump is pretty awesome. So I'll show you that when I go downstairs. But in the meantime, Q&A. And the first question is from Tanya. Tanya says that she's got a lot of weight to lose and that it's just slowly crept up. She had 4 kids and she was only 135 pounds and since then is all the way up to 220 and she's feeling really discouraged. Thanks for asking, Tanya. She wants to know how do I do this? How do I stick to it? Well, it's all about the food, Tanya. So just the same way as your weight crept up slowly over the years, you're not going to be back to your old weight overnight. It's not going to happen. So try to find it in yourself to be patient, but as soon as you change your food and you start eating only the right things, the weight's gonna start to go away on its own. Even if you didn't do any exercise, hard exercise. I always say you should do at least a good 30-minute walk per day, health permitting. But if you can't yet, the first and most important thing is that you change the food and you start eating like we do in the Well Your World Facebook group, which is to eat completely vegan with no added oil, as whole as possible. So no processed or packaged junk, anything like that. Take out the oil, eat all plants. Pretty much everything we buy is from the produce section or the bulk bins. So nothing really comes with a price tag or a label on it, unless it's something like canned foods, which we don't really buy very many canned foods because I try to do all of the canning myself. But anyway, Tanya, if you just switch the food and you figure out, the way to eat that you need to eat in order to maintain health, those pounds you want to get rid of are going to drop right off. It's really that simple. But the hard part is the emotional part. It's the challenge of eating the right way when everyone around you is not doing it. And the world around you is not designed for you to do it right. It's designed to keep you sick. Everything that we see advertised to us is packaged or processed food, refined carbohydrates, meat products, dairy products, and that's the problem. That's probably what got you there to the weight that you don't want to be at to begin with. So if you get rid of all that stuff out of your diet, your weight will just slowly and gradually drop off. At first it'll be pretty fast because you're all the way up at 220. And as you get lower and lower, it's going to be a little bit more challenging. You may have to get more and more strict as you continue to lose weight because you're going to hit some plateaus eventually. Say for example, if you take out all animal products first. Some people do it all at once and some people go in stages, right? So if you first take out all the animal products and dairy products, that alone may allow you to start losing some weight. Then you're ready to take it to the next level and get rid of oil, which I highly recommend you do from the very start. That's critically important if you want to get good results and maintain good health. If you take out the meat, dairy, and oil all at once, you're going to have some really good results with your weight loss. And then you may have to get a little bit more strict. Watch some of my calorie videos where I talk about staged eating and eating your low calorie density foods first, like your greens and salad, which is all 100 calories per pound, and then adding in your starches after that at 500 or 600 calories a pound. So there are some really specific techniques that I won't get too deep into here, but they're important because you need to understand the concepts in order to ensure that you're being compliant, that you're eating the right way. It's a little tricky at first. I don't know how new you are to this way of eating and everything, But it's challenging at first, and once it clicks, and you just totally understand it. So learn all this stuff, read the books that I always recommend, which would be The Starch Solution by Dr. John McDougall, and also The Pleasure Trap by Drs. Goldhammer and Lyle. Those are really important books if you want to understand exactly how to do this. But that's what is going to get you started. So I would read those books. If you're not a reader, there are lots of YouTube videos with those same authors talking about these concepts. There are videos that I've done if you go back and watch mine, such as the calorie video that I mentioned. I talk about social pressure. I sort of mentioned that the emotional side of this is really challenging, and it is. And he talks about that in the books. I talk about that in my social pressure videos. So you have to start to get in the know. That's probably the most important part, is to be motivated, learn the material. It's not very hard. It's certainly not complex. This is the most uncomplicated thing I've ever done in my life. And when you start to figure it out and you stick with it and you're able to stick with it for a long period of time, you're going to find that the weight just goes away. You feel better mentally and physically, and it just works. So that is my recommendation, is fix the food. Find a method where you can keep the food fixed, and you will succeed. So let's chop. Okay, next question is from Holly. She says, will you talk a little bit about residential solar? We've been watching this documentary on HBO. They mentioned it's common for people to lease the solar panels rather than purchase them. Do you use a lease option with your customers? So, okay, for those of you who don't know, I have a company that does residential and commercial solar installations here in Phoenix, and I've been doing that for like 9 years. Solar still stayed strong through the recession, pretty strong, which is about when I started, right after that. And the popular way of obtaining a solar system for your house was to do a lease, because there was no conventional financing at this time. Everybody had locked down their financing after the recession in 2008, and so it was really hard to get just a conventional loan to do a home improvement like solar. And so these companies were coming out with a way of leasing the solar. So you're paying a monthly payment usually. You don't own your system, so there's a lien on your house. And a lot of the savings that you would have been getting is going to the solar company that you would be leasing your system from. So they're taking a lot of the savings. They tried to make it so that your lease payment would be less than the amount you're saving from your utility company, because you're no longer having to buy as much power from them because you've got a solar system on your roof, which is all well and good, but that only saves you a few bucks a month, and you're not even increasing your property value because you don't own the system on the roof. And there's a lien on your property. So if you ever wanted to sell your home, the next people that buy your house, they would have to agree to continue the lease. And if there are lease payments, then they would also have to qualify for the lease. So they would have to go through a credit check and all this stuff for a lease that they didn't even really want to begin with, because you got it and they just have to inherit it. Or they can buy out the lease, which is usually a price that is way more than the reasonable cost of the system if you were to actually go and buy a similar system on the market, because their termination fees are crazy. I mean, they're purposely high. So a lease is generally not a very good deal. They do have prepaid leases where you've made all your payments up front, and the reason for that is because if you can't take the tax credit, here we have a 30% federal tax credit on a solar system, and if you can't take that credit, then the leasing company will take it, they'll own the system, and you will have made this prepaid lease payment up front, which is essentially the price of the system minus the tax credits, give or take. And so that's better because you're not having to make payments every month, but you still have a lien on your house and you don't own the system. So there are still negatives to a prepaid lease. But none of this really matters because the leases are a thing of the past. They were popular because there was no conventional financing. But 10 years later, anybody who would give you credit for this to do a loan for a solar system on your home, they know that these are a good deal now. Like, solar actually does pay for itself, and it saves you a lot of money, and you'd be nuts not to make your loan payment, because if you don't, then you have to pay even more to the electric company anyway. So it's a pretty safe bet. Obviously, some people default. I mean, that happens everywhere, but for the most part, you don't need to lease your solar panels anymore. You can get a conventional loan, maybe with a home equity loan or something like that. Again, still keeping it so that the payments that you're going to make to your loan are less than the amount you're going to save from the power company. So if you save on your electric bill $100 a month because you got a solar system installed on your roof, if your loan payment is $100 a month also for your solar system, you break even. So the benefits are just that you're being sustainable and you have green power. But even better than that would be if your loan payment was significantly less than $100, and in many cases that can be done because the loan products out there are a lot better now. So you could be paying $80 a month to your loan, saving $100 a month from the power company, and you're saving $20 a month with your solar system for the life of the loan, which is usually only maybe less than half as long as the solar system will actually last for its warranted life. So for the first few years, you're not making very much money, but as soon as your loan's paid off, you're making quite a lot of money. You could be making several $1,000s a year in power savings once your loan is paid off. And then the other way of doing it, of course, would be to just buy the whole system up front, take advantage of the 30% tax credit, and then you're saving the maximum amount of money starting with month number 1, right? So that's kind of how the leasing side of things work. I could tell you more about how residential solar works in general, but the policies are always changing. The reason it's been kind of a challenging industry in Arizona is because our utilities determine how good of a payback you're going to get off your solar system because of what that power is offsetting. We can't really go off grid in Phoenix because air conditioning usage is so high and batteries are too expensive still. So we're at the whim of the utility company and then the regulating body that determines the rules, which tend to be very utility company friendly here. So the challenge in Arizona has been with policy, and the better that technology gets, the less we care about policy because we get closer and closer to being just completely off grid, and then the power company can't really do anything about it. So that's kind of the direction that it's going, in my opinion, with the technology. But right now it's a volatile environment because of the policies that we have here in Arizona. So I don't know how it works where you are, but I could get into it here on the Arizona stuff, but I'll leave it at that. Follow up questions in the group, and I'm happy to tell you anything that you want to know. So that's solar. I'm excited to say that I've got a deal for the farm solar system that I want to build, which is going to be a steel structure that holds solar panels on top of it. I've finally got a deal in the works for that, so I'll be doing that in the next couple months. And so the building of the farm is in full force, so I'll keep you posted. Okay, next question. Elizabeth asks, are you a minimalist? I never see much on your walls or counters, or just super tidy. I try to be super tidy. I am not a minimalist. There's just no definition of the word minimalist that would apply to my life. I like to think that I don't buy things I don't use. The things that I buy, we use, all of these tools and things that I work on with, such as freeze drying, canning, all the things that I spend my money on, at least I am actually very actively using them. So I don't know, but I'm still not a minimalist. I mean, I have a ton of things that I do not technically need, such as a gym in the basement. That is not a thing that a person actually needs, but I like it and I use it a lot. But as far as the tidiness and the counters and the walls, when we built this house a couple years ago, we sort of conceded that there wouldn't be enough money left to do any kind of fancy interior design yet. So the whole point was to get the house built, move in, get comfortable, be in a place where we're not paying rent and whatnot, And then as the money comes in the future, we'll invest more into things like putting stuff on walls, also known as art or otherwise. We are definitely in need of some interior design, but it is what it is. We're happy, it's nice. As far as the counters, I guess I just try to be tidy. We try to not have a lot of things out on the counter because that is a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, having too many things like kitchen gadgets that sit out. I'm not really big on that. So that may be what you're referring to as well. But no, I'm not a minimalist. I love the ideas and the concepts. I love the kind of the self-reliant part of the homesteading part, but I don't know if you can be a homesteader and be a minimalist. I don't know how those things all intertwine, but it seems like a real homesteader would need a lot of things that someone who's just a minimalist would consider unnecessary, you know? So anyway, no, I'm not a minimalist, but I admire those that are. Okay, Anne asks, what do you think about pesticides on veggies? Obviously, I don't like pesticides on veggies, but I also have told you in the past that I don't buy only organic produce, mostly because I'm cheap, I guess. And when the big sales happen, it's not on the organic stuff. So I rinse things and do my best. And some things like leafy greens and stuff we buy organic, but some of the other stuff, not so much. These are not organic pineapples, I'm pretty sure. So, yeah, but I mean, obviously the perfect world would be completely pesticide free. Erica says, why freeze dry over dehydrating? Dehydrators sure are cheaper. Well, it's a completely different thing. Dehydrating works fine for some things, but what I'm trying to do with freeze drying is get a couple of things. One, with like recipe food, the reason I bought the freeze dryer was to make my own backpacking food. Freeze dried food is super light, even lighter than dehydrated food. And the quality of the finished product is really different from dehydrating. Dehydrating uses hot air to essentially dry the moisture out of the food, so it changes the food. When you see a freeze-dried banana, for example, it's shriveled down and really, really hard and crunchy. When you see, that was dehydrated, so when you see a freeze-dried banana, it looks just like a raw banana, except that it's dry, but it's fluffy and soft and completely different. It hasn't been dried with heat. It's been frozen, and then the liquid was extracted out using this process of sublimation, where you've created a vacuum inside the freeze dryer. When the ice melts, it turns into a gas and it's pulled out of the food. Long story short, the finished quality of the freeze-dried food is much higher. It can be rehydrated. Many things can be rehydrated back to what they were before almost. So that's a big deal, because when I bought it, I wanted to make my own freeze-dried backpacking food, which, as you know probably from experience, those freeze-dried food that you can buy at an outdoors store, you add hot water, boiling water, close the Mylar bag, and you've got a ready hot meal that has been rehydrated from freeze-dried. I bought the freeze dryer because I wanted to create stuff like that, because you cannot buy healthy versions of backpacking food in the existing freeze-dried form. So then I started drying freeze-dried basil because I was growing it and I had so much I didn't know what to do with it. So I started freeze-drying that. And the freeze-dried basil, when you add it to a dish or you add water to it, it's just like fresh, raw basil. It rehydrates just like a fresh basil would, whereas a dried basil is completely different. You could make basil pesto out of freeze-dried basil, but you can't make basil pesto out of dry basil that's like a dried herb in a shaker bottle type of basil, because it's just completely different. So yeah, the machine and the whole process is very different, but it's a very high quality product. The other thing that's cool about freeze drying is after it comes out of the freeze dryer, I can put it in a Mylar bag, seal it up, and it will last for 25 years. So the food lasts a really long time. It keeps its nutrition and last just in that current form for a really long time. And so that's really cool. I mean, I don't expect to keep a lot of food for like 25 years, but it's good to know that, you know, you've got a really high quality product that'll keep with a really long shelf life. And dehydrated food doesn't really do that. You can't really keep dehydrated food any longer really than anything you keep in your pantry. So that's why I've gotten into the whole freeze drying thing. I really think that there may be a market for growing high quality organic herbs and spices like, you know, I did with basil and could do with parsley and cilantro and any number of things in the farm that I want to build, and then I could freeze dry it and it could go anywhere. You can ship it because it's really light. So shipping it is really easy and affordable. Obviously the shelf life's awesome. I don't have to, if I have a bumper crop of basil and I don't know how I'm gonna sell it all before it goes bad, well, I now have the option of freeze drying it and selling it once it's freeze dried in sort of a packaged, you know, product. So that's pretty awesome that you don't have to worry about selling everything you grow fresh. So it gives you options as a grower if you wanted to do something. So yeah, I'm toying with getting more freeze dryers once I have the farm going and doing some kind of operation with that. I don't know, maybe, we'll see. So I recently took Kathy Fisher's kitchery recipe and I freeze dried it and then I rehydrated it like I would if I was backpacking to test it out, and it was amazing. And I've also done it with chili, I've done it with rice and beans, I've done it with mashed potatoes and gravy, I've done my marinara freeze dried. So I can eat virtually anything backpacking that I've pre-cooked and freeze dried, and they taste really good, unlike the meals that you buy that are full of either animal products or oil from the camping type of stores or backpacking outfitters and whatnot. All right, that is it. I think I had 7 pineapples. I took like maybe 6 for the 4 trays, and I've got at least 1 or more maybe in this half-gallon jar of extra that I will just eat in the fridge. So let's go downstairs and I will show you the freeze dryer. Okay, this is the freeze dryer. You may have seen it in some of my other videos, I don't know, but this is what it looks like. It's a full-on appliance, let's be honest. And in fact, in my case, it's the appliance that uses the most amount of energy in the house probably. All it is, this is pretty much a freezer. You put the 4 trays in here, which I'll do in a second, and then it freezes for 9 hours. And then after that, this pump turns on and it sucks all the air out of this chamber and it creates a vacuum. And then each one of these 4 racks has a heater on it. And so while the cylinder around the outside is freezing, the trays themselves will be heated up ever so slightly in a way that would melt the ice. But because it's a vacuum inside the chamber, the ice is melting into a gas instead of into a liquid. And then the gas hits that cold area on the outside and it refreezes into ice. So you're essentially transferring the ice out of the inside of the food to the outside of this chamber, and it refreezes. And then after the load is done, you take out the food, it's totally dry, and then you unplug, you defrost the machine essentially, and the water leaks out this hose into a bucket, and it's just water that comes out. So that's how it works. But before, and I'll do another video where I just talk about this pump, because there are a lot of people out there that are interested in it because it's new. But the pump used to have oil, like lots of motors require to run well. So I had to empty the oil out. I had to clean out the pump once in a while. It was really, I didn't enjoy it at all. And it was one thing that was kind of, sometimes the freeze dryer would go unused for a little while because I didn't really want to deal with that pump. So they just came out a few weeks ago with this oilless pump that requires virtually no maintenance, except every few years you could change the seal or the bearings, which is, I understand, a pretty simple process. The pump's way quieter, it uses less power, and I don't have to do anything. All I do is put the food in. That's step 1, and step 2 would be take the food out and put it in my Mylar bags and let this thing defrost. It's so easy now. Whereas before it did require quite a bit of ongoing maintenance that you had to deal with. So I was sick of that. So I'm really excited about this pump. Like I said, I'll do some other videos. There's a link to the freeze dryer in the description of this video if you want to learn a little bit more about it. I got it because I wanted, over time, it would save money. I wanted to learn how it works. I wanted to learn about how I could potentially use the farm and the freeze dryer together as a business model. So I got it for a lot of strategic reasons. So you know, you have to consider the pros and cons, and obviously it's an expensive unit, but it does some pretty amazing things for food prep and stuff like that. I mean, even if I wasn't into backpacking and I was just needing to eat healthy all the time, I could just go on a bender and cook a ton of food, freeze dry it, load after load after load, and get a nice store, like I talked about the kitchery recipe. And you know, people that aren't necessarily backpacking but just want a way to have food on the go when they're traveling somewhere or something like that, having access to quick healthy food via a bag of freeze-dried whatever may be handy. So there may be something there. Maybe there's some interest from other people in the group that would buy something like that. I don't know. So I'm just kind of experimenting at this stage, and we'll see what happens. Anyway, all right, let's get the pineapple and turn this baby on. So that's mostly it. The pineapple's in there. This is freezer mode. In 9 hours, this pump's gonna turn on, suck out all the air, and do its thing for about another 24 hours. And so yeah, it takes quite a while to do it. It's a bit energy intensive, but other than that, if you're like me and you're able to power it with solar power, then that's pretty awesome. So that's what I'm working on, and I'll make some more videos about the freeze dryer in the future. I hope the Q&A was helpful, and I'll see you on the next video, which is planned to be the processing of the tomatoes into diced tomatoes and sauce tomatoes. I've been promising that video, so I will get it out as fast as I can. I'll see you on the next video. Thanks. Bye.